But before that, we're going to look at rugby. We touched on the Six Nations right at the top of the programme, of course, and the top Wales players nicely cocooned away from all the politics swirling around Welsh rugby right now, aren't they? But the Six Nations continues against a backdrop of more discussions and debate over the future of the domestic game. Meetings taking place in London today and Dublin tomorrow, partly aimed at thrashing out which competitions the Welsh regions will be playing in next season. A row brewing also over the missing 800,000 that the regions claim they haven't been paid for this season's Heineken Cup. It's emerged that they could take legal action if the European Rugby Cup decide to withhold this money. Well, last night, the WRU Chief Executive Roger Lewis gave us his thoughts on this and the various issues. Earlier, though, I got a regional perspective from Robert Davies, speaking in a personal capacity as the major shareholder at the Ospreys. Here's what he had to say.
I was quite shocked to read your report, the BBC, that is, report, about what Mr. Lewis had said. And he was saying that, firstly, the regions are open to the idea of expanding national contracts. That's untrue. Both sides plan to make more deals. That's untrue. We have a plan on the table that we are discussing. That's untrue. Regions have engaged with that plan. It's untrue. WRU has been working on the plan for several months. That's untrue. And regions originally contacted the union to keep 6 players in Wales. That's untrue. In fact, there is no relationship with the regions. And the regions have been consistent in their view. And there is no system to support central contracts in Wales.
Yeah, well, Regional Rugby Wales have reiterated today, they stand by what they said last week about central contracts, namely that no agreement is in place to play players who are centrally contracted.
That's correct.
Can you outline, the issues around this and what the objections are to central contracts?
Well, first, it's not been debated. It's just something that has been put on the table by Mr. Lewis, and it's not been debated as to whether or not it's good for Wales, bad for Wales. It's not part of a strategy. It's not part of a plan. The PwC report, which the union commissioned, actually stressed the need to increase revenues. Now, those revenues can only come from the club game in reality, because the international game is saturated with fixtures. And therefore, what we're trying to do is to increase revenues for our own benefit and for the benefit of the retention of players in Wales. And there's just been no debate about central contracts whatsoever.
Do you not think it is a good plan, though? I mean, if we're struggling to keep players here in Wales, we're losing players to France and to England, left, right and centre, isn't it a good thing if central contracts can help to keep them?
There's no proof that the players will stay in Wales. It's got to be part of an overall plan. We employ 400, 500 professional people. To employ 1 or 2 is not going to build the base for a professional sport in Wales. It's not going to do it. You have to have a whole plan, not just a plan that grabs headlines and says that certain marquee players are staying in Wales. We got 1 player so far. Fine, good luck to him. But you need hundreds of players.
Can they contract anyone down at the Ospreys? I mean, Alan Wynne-Jones has signed with the Ospreys.
Well, anybody who's out of contract with the Ospreys, yes, of course they can sign. Otherwise they can't.
Would you see that happening?
No.
You don't think any Ospreys players will end up being centrally contracted?
Highly unlikely.
Because
the players are already contracted, other than 1. We're in discussions with that 1. And as I say, to have 1 or 2 or 3 players centrally contracted, it just doesn't work. The union tried it once before with, I think, the first player to be contracted centrally, strangely enough, was Derwyn Jones, who was Warburton's agent. And that proved not to be successful, because there's no plan to go with it. If there was a plan to increase the strength of rugby in Wales right throughout, all the way down to the grassroots, fine, well, let's debate it, but there is no plan, or at least not one that we're aware of.
Can I ask you, Robert, about the other issues swirling around at the moment? Two big meetings this week to try and resolve the future of the various competitions. There's one today in London.
Yeah.
Do you know what's happened? What's happened from that meeting?
I haven't heard as yet. I'm not sure if it's finished, but it'll be very difficult if there's anything to come out of it, as the English have stated, and they stated a long time ago, 18 months ago, that they will not participate in the European competition, and that will not change. So therefore, I can't see how anything could come out of that meeting today, but I haven't heard.
There's a big meeting in Dublin tomorrow, ERC meeting,
Yeah.
which the regions have been invited to attend. Do you know whether they'll be sending someone to that?
We won't be.
Why not?
There's no point. Look, this is the ERC. This goes to the root of the differences between us. The ERC is run by the unions, and they this week have decided not to pay the regions in Wales 800,000 that is due to them. Nobody had the decency to tell anybody. This was to enable the regions to pay the players' wages. The WRU FD, Steve Phillips, attended the meeting that decided not to make the payment. He did not inform the regions, and the regions had to make arrangements to pay the wages themselves. We are not going to turn up there as one vote out of many and just be like a nodding donkey. There's just no point. There's nothing we can contribute and nothing they would want us to contribute.
But surely it's in your interest to attend, to fight your corner, isn't it?
We have written to them today voicing our concerns, but one vote out of many, there's just no point in being there because we know it's just a kangaroo court.
That sounds like a defeatist attitude, though, doesn't it? I mean, if you've got a seat on the board...
We've written them today, and we expect them to honour the agreements that they've committed to.
How tough has it been, Robert, for the regions to bridge the gap with this money missing? I mean, how tough has that been? Because as you alluded to already, you've had to scrabble around to pay the wages, haven't you?
Well, it's no different to any other business. If suddenly you're confronted with somebody who promised to pay you and they don't, a large sum of money, you have to make alternative arrangements to cover that shortfall, and that's what we did last Friday, and we covered it to enable the wages to be paid. But it's no way to run a business. We've got no relationship, any meaningful or trustworthy relationship with the union, and it's no way to conduct any business, let alone one like the WRU, which is really a public body. It's disgraceful.
If this money isn't paid, I mean, what's the worst case scenario? Could this send one of the regions out of business?
Well, at the end of the day, we are owed a lot of money, and maybe it's a way of the union threatening us again. They have a history of threatening and using the big stick. That's one of the reasons why we no longer wish to be party to an organisation that's run by the unions. We'd rather be dealing with proper business people who act in good faith. And the outcome, who knows, if they continue not to pay us, well, we'll have to make alternative arrangements. And that could be legal or financial.
Then in terms of alternative cup competitions for next season, are you, as regions, determined to pursue an alternative European competition that isn't run by the ERC?
Well, at the moment, there is no alternative competition. The ERC has had notice for over 18 months that this is going to happen. We warned them, we repeatedly asked them, what are you going to do? Our own agreements came to an end. We're left just wondering where we're going to play. There's no Rabo for next year, there's no European for next year. And we're expected to commit to a payroll and paying players costing us £4 or £5 million a year. It's very unfair. We don't know what income we're going to have. And so to answer your question, unless the union comes up and tells us, well, there is a Europe that we can participate in meaningfully, and in that I mean financially meaningful, then I can't see us agreeing anything other than an Anglo-Welsh.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if the unions sort of meet you halfway, if you find some middle ground on the European Cup issue, would you drop plans to join an Anglo-Welsh league?
Look, we've been trying to negotiate with the union for a long, long time. It's very, very difficult for us to have any sensible discussion with the union. They've reneged on so many agreements with us. There's no trust left.
These are difficult times, aren't they, Roberts? I just wonder...
They're very difficult, and it's very sad. You know, I'm looking forward to going to Ireland the weekend, one of 10,000 or more Welshmen. We've all buy our ticket, pay our hotels, buy our beer, and buy our own food, and we enjoy ourselves. And it's very sad that we should be going there in this atmosphere where we don't know next year what the game is going to look like. And this is a game we've all supported for many, many years. It's very, very sad. And the union board itself should be looking at itself. I don't think that anybody comes out very well out of this, but the union board itself should have shown more leadership, more decisiveness, more honesty, more integrity. And everybody's complicit in this, and we need really to have a look at the way we run the game in Wales.
At Radio Wales Sport at 14 minutes to 9, and strong words there from Rob Davies, who's speaking as a major shareholder at the Ospreys. Regional Rugby Wales, the umbrella organisation acting on behalf of the regions, declined to respond to what Roger Lewis told this programme last night, apart from reiterating the stance they made last week on central contracts, namely that there is no agreement in place to play centrally contracted players at the regions. In the studio with us, Peter Jackson, who writes for the Rugby Paper, plus James Corrigan and Graham Clutton of the Daily Telegraph. How do we see through the fog on all of this? The WRU saying one thing on central contracts, for instance, the regions seemingly saying something completely different. I mean, for fans of the game here, they just don't know what's going on, do they?
A very revealing interview with Rob Davies, and one which ought to cause great concern to the Welsh Rugby Union. The fact now that the non-relationship has hit rock bottom. Why would the regions waste their time going to another European Rugby Cup Limited run by the unions when they've been arguing for 2 years? The English and French clubs gave them notice. No Europe under ERC. All right, the French have since done a volte-face on that. There must have been 500 meetings on this issue and nothing has been resolved. The facts of the matter are, Ian, that probably next week the Welsh regions and the English Premiership clubs will announce that they will be playing in a 16-club Aviva Premiership, Welsh, Anglo-Welsh, whatever you want to call it, from next season. Now, the IRB, the WRU and probably the RFU will say, oh no, you can't do that. That's when push comes to shove. And as I understand it, there are people, big power brokers in England, who feel that they've been pushed around enough on this and the club game is big enough to say, well, we're going to go and do it. Now, that has the capacity to throw the whole world game into turmoil, because those English clubs have the England team by and large. They also have huge swathes of Samoa, Tonga, Fiji and Argentina. So that is the sort of nuclear option. Now, if that does not bring the unions to their senses in terms of finding out a compromise, then I don't know what will. And I see nothing wrong whatsoever with the clubs being in charge of their own commercial destiny. That is the only way that they will reunite Europe. As long as the unions insist on clinging to power, the English will stay out. And the English, as we know, with the vast population, that's a serious blow in broadcasting terms.
So, James, at a time when we perhaps should be focusing on the Six Nations Championship, it looks increasingly like a kind of titanic shift in the domestic game.
Well, Peter just, the way Peter described that was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What we are now facing is, and I think it needs to reach its head now, because this is just going on and on like a cheap EastEnders script. It's going nowhere. And it really needs to reach its head, get to its head and get sorted out, because at the moment, rugby, we got this wonderful Six Nations competition going on, and it's going to get better and better. And it's the great paradox. You've got this wonderful game. Everybody's watching it. Everybody's in the pub enjoying it, going on their travels and watching it. And behind it, the bomb is threatening to go off. We need that bomb to go off, and we need something to be sorted. We need it now.
And Graham, is it kind of a case of fiddling while Rome burns in a way? Because while all these discussions go on, the talent drain continues, doesn't it? We've got Bradley Davies today, the latest to confirm he's off, leaving the Blues for Wasps.
Yeah,
they're all jumping off the Titanic.
Yeah, they are. I mean, we've listened to what Robert said about central contracts contracts, and it's quite clear that we're not going to have swathes of players signing central contracts. So I mean, I really don't know what happens to Sam Warburton next season. I dare say there might be one or two more signed central contracts, but this is clearly going to end up in court. The way Robert Davies was speaking, it's a kind of almost a fait accompli that they will win, they will break away, they will be in a 16-team Anglo-Welsh competition next season, in which I dare say that the Union will then find themselves in a very difficult position. Do they allow Sam Warburton to cross the Great Divide and play for the Cardiff Blues in that competition? Now, it was also mentioned, I think Peter mentioned about, is somebody going to give? I don't think either side are going to give, and that's why it'll end up in court. And I think the end result is going to be very, very messy. But at this moment in time, I really can see a breakaway happening.
Interesting. I don't see any point whatsoever in the central contract policy. I mean, yes, if you're going to sign 25, 30 players, and that's going to cost you millions, I don't see the point of trying to get 6. And also, as Martin Williams said on Scrum 5, very perceptively, let's suppose there's a big debate about who's going to be the open side for the last game of the Six Nations. Sam Warburton, who is a great bloke, Sam, Wales are very lucky to have him, or Justin Tipuric. Now, they'll probably go for Warburton, and then people will say, oh, well, he's the Union man. And Justin Tipuric isn't the Union man. So it has a potential to be divisive.
Yeah, but Peter, I mean, I hear that argument. But if we want to use Justin Tipuric as a prime example here, when Marty Holler was playing for the Ospreys and supposedly being paid for by sponsors as well as the Ospreys, Justin Tipuric would probably rightly have said at the time, well, hold on a minute, it comes to a playoff game at the end of the season, who are they going to pick, Marty Holler or me? Well, quite clearly we're going to pick Marty Holler. So, nothing is fair in love and war, and we're not playing on an even playing field here. So, if Justin Tipuric is playing out of his skin next year, I imagine that he would get picked, because I don't think the Welsh Rugby Union would want to act to the detriment of themselves and have Sam Warburton playing if he was completely out of form, not fully fit.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, but interesting stuff, and plenty to come on this story, of course, over the next week or two. Thanks for joining us, Graham Clutton, James Corrigan and Peter Jackson.